Welcome back to the channel, guys. So today I'm basically going to look at the Unit 1 Paper 2 2024 Environmental Science past paper. Yes, guys. So let's go through this as quickly and as best as we can. All right. Of course. So I'm going to look at Module 1 first. So let's go into the question. Number 1 says to define the following terms. So habitat. An habitat is the physical location where the organisms live. This is the natural home of organisms, for example, soil, trees, plants, etc. Alright guys, so we live in a house. This is a man-made house, so you would call this house habitat. In nature, things that happen in nature like plants, birds live in plants. So the plant would be an habitat for the birds. Alright guys, let's move into the next term. The next one said you should also define ecotone. All right. For many of us, in simple words, you could say it is a boundary between two ecosystems. All right. But let me read what I wrote. You said ecotone is a transitional boundary between two ecological communities. For example, the joining of a desert and a forest, we call it a grassland. So between a saltwater and freshwater, we call it estuaries. So the estuary there would be the ecotone. All right. Between dry and wet ecosystem, we call that those ecotone marshlands. And between terrestrial and marine ecosystem, because we call those ecotone mangrove forests. All right, the other term we should discuss define is lithosphere. Now, the lithosphere is the outer solid part of the Earth and includes the oceanic and continental crust and the upper mantle. Note briefly, the Earth is divided into five main physical layers: the lithosphere, the asthenosphere, the mesosphere, the outer core, and the inner core. The lithosphere is where earthquake occurs because it consists of the plates. All right, so you could simply say the lithosphere is a solid part of the land, but it's not the deeper part of the land, the more surface area towards the side, right? We call it the lithosphere. So it is land. So the land underneath the sea as well, the soil, the solid part under the sea, not land, but the solid is not it's not referred to as land because land is not covered by sea, right? So correction there. And just remember now that there are also solid parts underneath the sea. Those solid parts underneath the sea and rivers would basically also be a part of the lithosphere. All right, let's continue. All right, we should also define environmental resistance. All right, I put two terms there, but let's go into it. But the term environmental resistance, guys, it means the ecosystem can prevent a change in the ecosystem. Its ability to prevent a change, withstand a change. So, for example, a disease hit the plants. The plants have immunity to the diseases. Well, basically, the disease never do anything to the plants, never kill off the plants. So, in that case, the plants they are resistant to the disease. All right. So let me read what they said about environmental resistance. It said environmental resistance is the ability of the ecosystem to prevent a change in the ecosystem after it has been disturbed. All right. So the disease there would be a disturbance, but the disease come, but it didn't actually affect the crops. All right. So that's an example. And please note that with environmental resistance, no change will really happen to the ecosystem. All right. But for clarity's sake, guys, I also define as you can see here, environmental resilience. So I'm correct. It's resilience. All right. So environmental resilience here, guys. It refers to the ability of an ecosystem to return to its original state after experiencing some changes. So with environmental resilience, there's changes. So for example, the disease came, it destroyed a number of plants, but the plant seeds are left back, and those plant seeds regrow while the disease might pass. So those original plants were there, they germinate back seeds, and those seeds grow back into those original plants. So it returned to its original state as before, even though the disease passed through and killed off many of the resilience. All right, in that case, I call that environmental. It's very important that you know the meaning between the two of them. All right, good. Part B of that question says, a marine biologist studied some species of barnacles found in shallow tidal water off the coast of the Caribbean island. In her observation, she notes that the Caribbean barnacles, cha, malus, proteus, and the gooseneck barnacle, Palacypes polymerus, have a stratified distribution along the coast of that Caribbean island, with Palacypes polymerus thriving only on the lower strata. When the biologist removed Polycypes polymerus from the lower strata, she observed that the population of Chamalus proteus spread throughout that area. Whelks are the main predator of both species, and both species may also be displaced by limpets and mussels, which compete for space. And part one of that question would say now, use the concept of fundamental and realized niche to explain why Shalamus proteus spread throughout the area when Polycypes polymerus was removed from the lower strata. All right, guys. So, in order for you to understand, you just say, for example, the sea, right? That's what they're saying. No, this is the sea, and say this is how deep the sea is. So, you said it's divided into two strata, right? So, say this one here is the lower, and up here is the upper, right? All right. So say this is what you're actually looking at. So the whole of this is sea, the upper part of the sea and the lower part of the sea, the deeper part. All right. So what happened, guys, is that both species, they were actually in they call this, both of them are in resource partitioning. They are related in species. So what they do, they coexist. Sorry, they coexist. And what happened is that one of the organism feeds on the top part of the sea and the other one feed on the lower part of the sea. They actually feed on the same resources, no, but they coexist. But one don't come above the other unless one get weak. That's how one will go to the next 1-0. If one get weak and resources get short, stronger one will gradually overtake the weaker one. But anyways, let me read what this is saying now. So it said, use the concept of fundamental and realized niche to explain why Shalamus proteus spread throughout the area when polymerus was removed from the lower strata. All right, what happened, guys? What happened is that each organism, both of them can feed on everywhere, in the lower and upper, in the deep sea and the shallow part, the upper surface, really. So both of them can feed, they feed off the same resources. But what happened is that they are in a competition, but they will not cross the border of each other because they coexist. All right. So what happened when when the polymers are removed from the lower strata, those of the upper would start coming down to the lower to feed because those organisms that they're competing with are no longer there. So that happened with fundamental niche. Once there's no competition, the organism will spread out, use up more resources, use up all the resources it can use. All right. But once there is realized this, once it is in a competition, it will just stick to the area where it has less competition. There's no competition at all. It will stick there. But once the competition is removed, it will spread its wings and take up the other area and use up those resources. All right. All right. Let's move on. All right. Part 2 said, explain how the relationship between Shalamus, Proteus, and Polycypes polymerus demonstrate environmental resistance. All right. He said, one was able to take the place of the other in a food chain. In case one of the species extinct, one will be able to fill the location occupied by the other. So organisms that feed off one will immediately have a replacement food source. All right. So if a disease come in and kill one of the species, the other one is there to take over and replace that one immediately. All right, guys. So the more species you have, the more species diversity you have in an area, the more resistant it is to change. Because if one species die out, the next one can take its place. All right. All right. Part C said, using the study described in B, explain the difference between diversity within species and diversity between species. All right. All right. Let me read. It said, both species of barnacles are examples of species within species. This means that both species are of the same family and can interbreed. They only have differences in their genetic variation. So, for example, guys, remember organisms of the same species are able to interbreed. So, yeah, for example, dogs, canine. All right, let's look at dogs. You have different breeds of dogs. You have Rottweiler, Pit Bull, German Shepherd. We have some they call mongrel or local mongrel in the Caribbean, right? Doberman. All of those would be a species within a species. So they are all dogs. They have the same species. They can interbreed with one another. But what happens is that they are different in genetics. They are all dogs, but they might have different height, different color, different type of hairs. Some are hairy, some are loop, right? And so forth. So species within a species would be they can interbreed, but they are different in genetics. They are characteristics. All right. Um, Diversity between species now, meaning you have two species of animals, they are not able to interbreed. So, for example, a goat and cattle, or I could say cats and dogs, those are two different species. All right. Same thing with plants. You have mango tree, I know mango tree, you have citrus tree, you have pear, those three cannot interbreed. So they are of different species. So those are examples of diversity between species. There are different number of plants, different type of plants. They're just that they can't interbreed, they can't reproduce together. All right, so that's the difference there. All right, let's move on. All right, using a suitable example from the Caribbean region, describe the relationship between ecological succession and the climax community. All right, ecological succession, guys, is the quick stages of changes in an ecosystem. Succession will generally lead to a climax community gradually being formed. A climax community change slowly, complex food chains are formed and is stable. For example, a forest already reaches a stages of climax community. Large population of trees and animals exist. However, if it got burned down, the stage of changes it will take to reach back its original well-exist community is succession. For example, seeds will start germinating, plants will start growing back, animals will start coming back, food chains start existing again. Eventually, climax community will be reached. All right, guys. So let's look at this. A forest that already have all its trees. It's like it can't grow any more tree. Where it's that it has everything it needs. That the well-grown trees there, right? All the plants, the birds that are there, insects, everything are there already. Soil organism. It's like it's not changing much. There's nothing much to change. It's changing now, but it's very slow. It's like you don't need to change. That's a climax community. Succession now is changes that happen. Changes are there to happen and they happen much faster. So in a climax community, when an ecosystem reaches climax community, there are little changes happening. Now, for example, you have a forest. The forest have everything, all the plants, all the animals. It is not climate. You call that now. It's climax community. Now, if that forest should get burned up, there would be any much thing there on the land, much, right? There might be seeds, ashes. The plants are dead. All right, they're burnt out. Now, there are much changes to be done for it to reach back to a forestry, right? Now, those changes would be the succession. Seeds will start germinating, the plants will be small, right? Animals will start coming back, insects will start coming back into it. So all those different changes now that will be taking place, there are major changes to take place now, right? So those now will be the succession. Those changes that will take place. They are much quicker and there are a lot of changes to be done. All right. Yeah. All right, table one show data collection over 6 months period by the marine biologist during her fieldwork. Right? Table one data collection by biologists. All right, so this is data. It said suggest one possible reason for the data obtained in July. All right, now what I have guys is that it says maybe water level increased back after a fall. It was coming to summer. So what happened up here, guys? Let's look back at the diagram. All right, as water level decreases, the species living here will get less. So it's coming to summer, so the species will get less. All right. Now maybe rain start fall back and the water rise, so the organisms up here increase. All right. So that could be an example why the trend changes right here, right? So if you notice, this population was going down, then it suddenly jump up. So because it's summer, it's going down. The water level is decreasing, so the population of those organisms are also decreasing, right? It says on the grid provided on page 9, draw a bar graph to illustrate the data in table 1. All right, so of course, guys, you label your diagram. You label your diagram, and of course, so for here, I put the population on this side, right? And the months over here. And of course, you have a key here, all right? And you should have a title up there, all right? So this is how it would look. It's a bar graph, okay? All right, number 2 question says, define the term species diversity, all right? So species diversity is both the number of species in an area and evenness of their abundance. All right, so species abundance is the total number of organisms in an area. It does not matter what species are. So in other words, guys, when you're defining species diversity, of course you could say it is the number of the total number of different organisms within an ecosystem. That would be a definition. But there's a term. So that the amount would be the abundance part, but the evenness part is the tricky part. Say for example, let me explain evenness. Now remember, the more even an ecosystem is in terms of plants to plants or animals to animals, then the more stable it is. The less even it is, the less stable it is. So for example, say you have two, say you a quadrant. You have two grass, you have 3 Spanish eagle, and you have 2 burbush, right? So let's say you did a quadrant right here. So this is ecosystem 1. All right. All right, guys. So as I was saying, say we have one ecosystem here, right? It have 2 grass, 3 Spanish eagle, and 2 burbush, and you have another ecosystem 2, right? After you do a study, it have 2 grass, 10 Spanish eagle, and 1 burbush. Which one is more stable? Which one would have a better, in other words, which one would have a better species diversity? Of course, this one, because this one is more even. Meaning, in relating to each plant, they are closely in number. They almost have the same number of plants for each plant, comparing to each other. Well, this one, you have little bit here, enough here, and little here. That's uneven. So this is less stable. All right. So when you're defining species diversity, guys, that's why you have to understand. You have to look at the evenness of the ecosystem as well as the amount of species you have. All right. So here it says the Coastal and Environmental Department of a country has received sightings of a new species in an area of xerophytic scrubland near one of several surface saltwater ponds found on that coast. As a result, officers from the Ministry of Environment decided to conduct a sample exercise to determine the species diversity of the entire coastal area. The data in Table 2 is derived from the sample exercise. Table 2, result of sample exercise. So here we have the species here, right? And the number of species here. So again, if you look at this as I was explaining a while ago, because I have such a big number here, it shows that the species diversity is not very even. It's too up and down. It's more even with these 4, but with the 36 there, it makes it very uneven right here. All right, but anyways, let's move on. It says, using the formula below, calculate the species diversity of the area sampled. Now, based on this would be the incorrect formula. So it should be this part on the top and this part at the bottom. All right. Now, when you do the writing, you should get this answer. So you're just filling everything here. All right, guys. So when you add up these here, you would get the capital N. You would get the total number of individuals. So you had here, you had up 3, 5, 12, 36, and 40. You get 50. All right. So that's the abundance right here. The total number is the abundance. So you just go in now and you fill in according to the formula. So 50 here, 50 minus 1 right there. Now for each of these, here now, for each of these it would be 3. So you're going to add up, after you do the bracket part, you're going to add up everything, right? So 3 here. So here would be 3 minus 1, that would be 2 times the 3 hen, right? So that's how you get 3 times 2. So here now 5. So you'd have 5 here, 5 minus 1 would be 4. 4 times the 5. And that's how you continue. And what you do now, one important thing when doing this calculation, guys, when you get the bottom number here, the denominator and the numerator, just use your calculator to divide it 2450 by 1300. Don't cancel. Don't need, if there is a calculator, don't cancel. Just don't cancel. Just divide the denominator into the numerator. All right, guys. Now we got 1.88. That's his answer. All right, now let's move into the next part of the question. It says, the Coastal and Environmental Department of a country asks your advice on determining the population of moving animals such as lizards, turtles, invertebrates, and birds, which may be found in the coastal area. Number 1 says, state 2 suitable methods that may be used for sampling these organisms. Now, guys, once you're dealing with large animals, you definitely have to have number 1. The mark release recapture method. That method is used for large animals. If you have slow moving animals, you could use a frame quadrant, the frame one. Insects and plants, you could use sweep net. If it's in the soil, if you want organisms in the soil, you'd have to use a tall grain funnel, and if it's in water, you use kick sampling. All right, so for the reasons for large animals, you use the mark release recapture method. All right, quadrant for slow moving animals. All right. Right. It says a new species sighted on the area is identified as the green iguana, which was previously unknown to the country. All right. Good. So you see that it is a foreign species, right? So if the only green iguanas found in the country before the sampling were appear found in the zoo, what is the percentage increase in green iguana is the sampling exercise? All right. What happened, guys? This is just maths, but it's actually for percentage increase. So originally, what they're saying, let's go back to the table. There are now 36. There are now 36 iguanas. No, when they did the test, but they said no. Before the test is done, there only a pair. Now a pair, guys, would be 2. So what's the increase? What's the percentage increase from 2 to 36? That's what they're asking. So you take away 2 from 36, and the increase would be 34. It increased by 34, right? The amount of iguanas increased by 34. So it is, you want to find the percentage 34. The percentage increase now, you put 34 over the total, which is 36 times 100, and you get a 94.44 increase. So that's a lot of increase, right? All right, it says the Coastal and Environmental Department determines that green iguana poses a threat to other organisms in the area of the xerophytic scrubland and the coastal surface saltwater ponds. Explain 2 types of interaction in which the green iguanas may be involved within the ecosystem. All right, 1, because they are a new species to the area, right? What happened? They could be a predator to some of the organisms that exist. Then you would have a problem. All right, right. So you could have predator-prey interaction. It might be feeding on other animals in the ecosystem. They may start migrating or die off. So these new species, they weren't in the ecosystem before. So when they're introduced there now, they're going to start feeding. They might start feeding on other animals that weren't having any problems. So you know that will become a problem now. So if they start prey on other organism, because the other organisms don't prey, you know that they'll start running and hiding and even changing location, changing ecosystem. So they're going to put them in a big change, a big problem, stress. All right. Number 2, which is also a serious problem that could happen, is intraspecific competition. You have interspecific and you have intraspecific. Now, intraspecific is dangerous. Organisms of the same species, they compete for the same resources. Like the lizard and the iguana are example of intraspecific. So what happened? They are feeding from the same resources in that ecosystem going to get short because they're not going to change the resources. That's how organisms stay. If they eat grass and grass is there, they're going to compete for the grass. That's how organisms stay. So when you have intraspecific, the competition going to get serious and then food going to become short. So the ecosystem going to go below its carrying capacity. If before the iguanas entered the ecosystem, the ecosystem could feed 50 lizards. Now that the iguanas come, the ecosystem can maybe just sustain about 5 or 10 lizards. So the carrying capacity of the ecosystem will change drastically, and that's going to be a problem. When that happens, the ecosystem going to become less stable. So if there's a disease or a fire, it will take long to come back or become resilient. All right. All right, next part said, explain how the green iguana may impact on the carrying capacity of the xerophytic scrubland and the coastal surface saltwater ecosystem. So I will say the carrying capacity will change drastically. The ecosystem will be able to sustain fewer organisms than usual because resources are reducing. It will be lower than the original. The ecosystem may become unstable. So the carrying capacity of the ecosystem will become less. All right. C, it says describe one potential environment and one potential health impact pertaining to the introduction of the green iguana to the country. All right, so it's a new species that is introduced, right? So what will happen is one, the environment, the migration of native species as competition increase. So species that were here before in the environment, like the lizard, and say not the lizards, but say other organisms, say the iguana come and the iguana start feeding another organism that established. Those organisms, if they now become a prey, they will start moving up and down, running. All right. Two, predator-prey relationships. And that now will destroy food chain that exists before and food webs. All right. Three, disrupt existing feeding relationships. All right. And for health, of course, these organisms can be vectors of diseases. So the iguanas can maybe carry diseases that were never here before or in the ecosystem before. All right. So like for example, of a vector, the mosquito is a vector for the malaria disease. So without the mosquito, once there are mosquitoes, chances you might have malaria, right? So that's dangerous. Can cause a lot of deaths, so loss of species diversity, etc. All right, guys. So of course that will take us to the end of module 1. So guys, I'm going to put a key so you can find the question easy. But please remember to watch these videos, guys. Watch them as much as you can. Study them. I try to give you explanation. So what will happen? You can learn not just the answers, but other little things that may come on the exam. So study these questions, and I'm going to leave a key in the comment and description section that you can use to find your questions easily. All right. So subscribe to the channel so as I post the other modules, you can get the updates of them automatically. Peace.